they now also have conservation subdivisions. They have another thing that they're concerned with. All the green areas are protected open space. There's Mansfield, Paula, and a lot of it's state. Some of it's Yukon owns, some of it Mansfield owns. And the dark lines up here, it's a little bit hard to see. The dark lines are all trails. And right up here is the Mansfield Town Hall and Community Center. So one of their goals was, we'd like everybody in town to be able to bicycle or walk to Town Hall without having to go out on the road. That's a nice goal. So if you're going to be developing down in here, or if your client is developing down in here, so let's say you're developing that parcel, one of the things you would have to do in that parcel is continue to make these connections. So you'd have to make that trail connection as part of your conservation subdivision.
I could be wrong, but that parcel did get developed, and they put the trail right there.
Well, like I said, I'm on the Windham Planning Commission, and this is sort of something that we see quite a bit. And this is on the small side, which most conservation subdivision regulations limit it to either 10 or 15 acres. But this particular one is just under 10. Zone 2 acres, maybe some, you have hill and stone walls are on the front, it's a farm field. It's 2 acre zoning, and slice it into four lots, put in some houses. A few sections of that stone wall end up remaining. And these are 2 acre lots, but if you'll notice, the houses are all pretty darn close together, so you didn't gain anything by having 2 acre zoning. And I did this little drawing, and then I started thinking about, that looks an awful lot like a road that for the past, I hate to say how many years, 30 years, I've been driving down to see my best friend down in Lebanon. And that used to be a farm field. And now and that used to be a stone wall there. And now it's just a nice open area with 2 acre lots. And I know they're 2 acre lots, minimum. And no neighborhood was created. I doubt these people even know each other. Yeah, we say this is sort of what we value in our rural landscape. So what I'm challenging you and my board is if we value that, why are we turning it into that? Let's see if we can't find another way of doing it. So I said we have environmental concerns. I'm presuming that Wellington has a inventory of natural resources as part of their town plan.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So you've done an inventory. The Conservation Commission has set goals through that. So one of the things you can do is use your regulations to accomplish those goals too. And we'll look at how you can do that. We'll go through this real quickly. Inventorying of the roads. These are wetlands and hydrology and wetland soils. This is the town not that far from here, and they have an awful lot of prime farm soils. They also have a lot of protected lands in the inventory. They also looked at their cultural resources. The little bike saddles are actually village centers, and there's cemeteries and old houses and old churches in the inventory. But then they realized, well, we've got all these areas that we value, like all those wetlands. We value every one of those wetlands. We value all that farm field. Well, you can't protect everything. So the next thing that they did is prioritize. So here's all the wetlands. Well, this is their priorities, what they really want to focus on. Same thing with farmland preservation. Those and those areas are what they want to focus on. So if you put the whole picture together in this town, this is what you get, sort of a cake layer effect of everything all together. And start looking for connections. It's important to maintain wildlife corridors. The fox may eat breakfast in one place, have a family in another, and spend the night in another. You need to be able to have those connections there. You see the paper? We have a puma out here. Walking through somebody's backyard. I've actually heard that they were here. A friend of mine told me they saw one about 3 years ago. So we started looking for connections. So everything is really connected to something else. The leg bone is connected to the thigh bone. So what if this parcel right here in the middle is a 112-acre parcel we're going to be developed? And let's go through a case study of a typical subdivision. And I call this designing with the land. And the first step is to put the site into context and look at the big picture. In 1624, John Donne said, "No man is an island." Well, I say no parcel is an island either. There's an environmental context. We have protected lands around it. We have wetlands around it. We have a cultural context. We have that village right there. We have a Blue Lace Trail. And we have lots of environmental connections. Wildlife are moving back and forth. They don't recognize property lines. We have cultural connections. So this parcel fits into a bigger picture, and it's important to recognize that. So the next step in a subdivision design is to examine the site to look at constraints to development, which with a traditional subdivision, this is kind of where you start. So here's our parcel, and we've zoomed in to just the parcel. It's on 2 roads, which certainly isn't a constraint. It has some wetland soils. Up at the top is a pond off-site, and there's an intermittent stream that feeds into it. Here's some steep slopes. So the next thing with a conservation subdivision is you need to figure out under a traditional development how many parcels can you fit, because that's how many you can get in a conservation subdivision. There's 2 ways of doing that. One is the yield method, where you specify this in your regulations. You ask the developer to just draw up a yield plan, and you count the lots on a traditional development, and that's how many maximum lots you could get in there. Another way is a formula method, which is just mathematical. Different towns include different things in their regulations. Just to look at the formula method, in this particular case we have 112 acres, 20 of them were wet, 6.5 were steep. That gives you 85 buildable acres. But you can't build the whole thing because you got to have a road to drive out to some of these houses and some of that acreage. So you have to subtract off the minimum lot size, or road space, and minimum lot size, 2.2. Minimum lot for the town is 2, and then the 0.2 is to make up for the road. So you get a density of 38. So we know we can get 38 lots in there on a conservation subdivision. So the next step, which is sort of skipped also by a traditional subdivision, is let's look for the unique character that sets this one apart. There's beautiful farm fields. That's like a third of a mile along there. Beautiful farm fields along there. I tried to do a panorama, not very successfully. But there's actually some turkey in there. As you see, it's usually in corn there. There's also stone walls through the woods. It's a hill that has a tremendous valley vista up to the northeast. Some of those steep slopes are pretty darn scenic. Kind of neat looking. So again, the next step in designing with the land is to get the full picture. And we put it all together. Here's the areas where we can't build, the red areas. That's the farm field that we'd rather preserve so we keep our rural character. We have those wildlife corridors that we kind of like to keep in mind. So now we've gotten this area that I'm calling buildable and unbuildable. It's like buildable meaning we want to build here. It's the best place to have houses. Unbuildable is the best place to preserve. So the next thing you do is locate the individual house sites. But actually what you're doing is locating where the septic and wells can go. is the next step. And you don't do lot lines, you're just looking for where houses can go. And the reason the houses can go there is because that's where you can get the wells and the septics in. Then you figure out how to connect those with roads. And the very last thing you do is draw the lot lines. As being on the planning commission, I've walked some parcels with some potential developers, and what they seem to always do is they walk up and go, well, the road goes here, and lot 1's here, and lots 2 there. They don't know what soil type is, what valuable trees are there, what natural resources are there. They just immediately think of lots. When you go backwards and think about where can I put the septic systems in the well, that's where the houses go, and then figure out what happens with the lot lines. And then this is the final plan for this one here. We have 38 house sites, 28 are wooded, 10 are in a village green setting down here. There's a whole village here, so when you're driving along the road now, you see another village feel, so it feels like it belongs there. 35 are directly on open space. 3 at the very top are not, but they're directly across the pathway. Stone walls are used as property boundaries, so we're keeping those stone walls. The farm field's preserved. There's 65 acres of open space. Wildlife corridors are still there. The wetlands are preserved. The watershed's protected. And there's many trails to explore. And I call this the win-win of subdivision development because everybody is a winner. The environment is certainly a winner with 65 acres preserved. Wildlife corridors are kept. The wetlands are preserved. Townspeople are winners. They keep their rural landscape. They'll get higher tax revenue because these properties will sell for more and will be assessed for more. New residents are winners. They have choice of sites. They can live in the village or in a wooded area. 35 of them are directly on open space. And here's why they will pay more. They're buying 1 acre and they're kind of getting 65 for free. So you're, in terms of a sales gimmick, you're selling those 65 acres to all 38 house lots there. The developer is a winner, more profitable, because there's, for 2 reasons. 1, properties will sell for less, and you're only developing in working small area of the site, so the construction costs are considerably less. And when we look at it back in the big picture, you really see it fits in. So here's our options. Conservation subdivision for the traditional subdivision. So conservation subdivisions are designed with the land, protect the environment, protect the community's rural character, provide a neighborhood setting, valued by home buyers, assessed at a higher rate, and more profitable for the developer. And one of the things that I also wanted to talk about tonight was the approval process.